Local news deserts are widening, making TV stations more important than ever as a hedge. A constricting syndication market and growing OTT content needs are pressing down on stations. Talent is getting much harder to recruit and retain. Spot TV is opening its embrace for another political windfall year, but behind that, the deck of its major categories is reshuffling. Sitting on top of it all are TV's general managers, whose leadership challenges only seem to continuously grow. So what's on the mind of the GM? I'm Michael Depp, editor of TVNewsCheck, and this is Talking TV, the podcast that brings you smart conversations about the business of broadcasting. Today, that conversation is with Kym Grinnage, Regional VP for Gray Television and GM of WWBT in Richmond, Virginia. We'll be right back to talk about Spot TV, OTT, programming needs, the Great Resignation, and everything else he's thinking about in another year in which the industry can't seem to find a moment to catch its breath. Welcome, Kym Grinnage, to Talking TV.
Hey, how you doing, Michael?
Very good. Good to see you. Kym, let's start with Spot TV. Are you able to plug the holes still being left by automotive?
Well, the good news is, I tell you, Michael, if you had asked me on March 13th, which was Friday the 13th during 2020, that was COVID day, that was the day that we sent most people home. We sent about 70% of our staff home. What would the rest of 2020 look like, 2021 and 2022? I would have said, whoa, 2020 is going to be a really tough year and can't tell you much about 2021. Well, to my surprise, and really to the real hard work at local stations, particularly this one here, we had a great 2020 and a great 2021, and 2022 is looking good. And the biggest part of that has been because of the efforts on the local level at the television stations. We've had record years of new business development with local clients. So we've been able to actually plug the gap that wasn't there anymore for automotive, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Have you been a beneficiary of sports betting?
Yeah, last year, it's a benefit and a curse. We had the benefit of it last year. It was a big boon to us. We were having a good year as well. And then we had political that was tightening our inventory. And then we got the sports betting. And I think that based on the way things are going this year, we'll run into some headwinds in the third and fourth quarter, but I think we'll probably be able to overcome it. But you're seeing some stations in the first quarter of this year, second quarter, who had big dollars this year, they're starting to run into those headwinds. But certainly it was a boon for a lot of markets.
So beyond that, what categories are performing best for you right now?
Well, as you know, you can't find a home that you can't bid on more than 3 or 4 times. So we've found that has really been a big boom because of the housing market. Home improvement has been a huge category for us. Also, the health category has been a really big category for us, up, double digits in both of those categories. And then when I took a look at some other categories that were up, we're up with legal. That's a lot of it has been various categories in legal. PI is probably the biggest category that's really up the most. And then we saw that a lot of the telecommunications and communications and entertainment, various local shows and entertainment that's been kind of bottled up for the last couple of years is now coming back and exploding in this quarter. So we're seeing that right now, automotive, that gap has been plugged. Can't say whether automotive is going to come back and be where it was. Just saw some reports today that companies like Toyota still having a problem with getting parts and the supply line chain is still backed up. We hope it begins to get better in third quarter, but honestly, until I see it, we're going to keep plugging away with these other categories and hopefully, fingers crossed it keeps up, and as long as we continue to do a lot of hard work.
And while we're on Spot, how are your account executives doing? Are you grappling with churn, perhaps more so than other times since the pandemic?
Okay, so don't jinx me, Michael. So we sell for WWBT and WUPV here, and as you know, we have to sell for digital and also spot dollars. And we have been very fortunate. We haven't really had anyone during that time who has left the station. We've got a good amount of career account executives that are here. Part of it is you have to have a good culture and a good environment. That's number one. The number one reason that people leave a place is because of their boss. And I don't necessarily mean because of me, but certainly it definitely starts at the top. But if there's sales managers and the general sales manager are not managing the department well, that's a problem. But also, I think that the account executives saw, particularly this was led by Gray, that during the pandemic, when, account executive would be probably the first person to be most nervous about their job.
Definitely.
But Gray, without going into details, they came to each one of the general managers and they said, put a plan together to keep your people whole for the first 3 months as we get through this. And then honestly, we got past April, May, and June, and then we went right back to our regular plans during that period. So Gray didn't have any furloughs, no layoffs, no one got their compensation cut. And actually the company paid bonuses at the end of the year. So I think a lot of that has allowed us to keep our account executives here, but certainly in news, it's a challenge, with a lot of people moving around. But it's been that way for the last several years.
Let's shift over to OTT. Gray has been bullish on OTT before it was so widely popular. What are you doing with your own local OTT desk in Richmond? Are you venturing into any streaming only production or primarily running simulcast right now?
It's a combination of both. And what we're doing right now is anytime we have our regular news shows on, we are simulcasting those because we know that sometimes, my daughter being one of them, even I told her, you need to start watching regular TV in the morning. But she says, Daddy, I can catch you on streaming. So that's what she catches me. And that's what we're finding, that we have to be where people are. So in addition to our regular shows when we're on, we now do podcasts. We do OTT from the desk, because each one of the stations has a OTT desk unit that was set up. That was a mandatory thing from Gray. Right. And so we have been training many of our people in news to come on and do a little update. It's either going to be a weather update, something about what's going on in the community. And now we have those regularly scheduled. Not as many as I want to have. I want us to be a 24/7 operation. But now at least we're at a point where there are regular updates during the day. And that show doesn't have to be as polished, maybe, to use for lack of a better word, as our shows from the studio, but it needs to be something that's giving information. Ideally, what I want to do later on is I want to make those OTT time periods available to the community so that we can not just have information going out that we produce, but to invite people in to talk about things that may be of interest to the community. And as I can develop an audience for that, of course, the next thing we'd like to do is to monetize that as much as possible. So it's something that's here to stay for sure. And it has a very nice corner in our newsroom, and it's up and running right now.
So you're talking about bringing people in, say doing a 15-minute interview or so with them, just sort of, rather than going out and doing field production, that'd be bringing stuff into the studio and producing.
Yeah, I think that what you're having now is the way, to me, TV stations survive is they're thinking about local. And so what does your community want to do? We don't have enough local shows necessary to have access to everyone. But if you do have someone who, let's say, wants to talk about the local economy or the gig economy, or to talk about how we can develop more local entrepreneurs in the community, then why not have that person come in, do a 20-minute show, maybe once a week or every 2 weeks, and talk about what's relative in the community. I think that allows you to give access in the community, and then at the same time, you're developing a local audience. One of the things that we're trying to do that's important to me, and I think that some of this was a result of the social justice movement, is I believe that everyone is looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion in a different way than they ever did before. And I think that we have to make sure that in all of our programming, and local programming probably being the most important one, that we make sure that we're looking at all of our audiences. That's brown people, Hispanic, Black, white, everyone, to have an opportunity to not only see themselves on TV, but to be reflected by the programming that we do. And I think that with a market where we have 30% of the population here is African-American, probably if you include undocumented, we're about 5% Hispanic. We have to begin to do programming that is allowing those audiences to see themselves. And I think one of the most important places that you can do it is the obvious place. And I think we do a pretty good job, as well as the other stations in the market, is with your local news. Cover those communities the way you should, And I think that's the way that local TV wins.
You brought up podcasting a few minutes back. I wonder, do you see spinning up some video podcasts as part of the mix too? That's a viable, kind of inexpensive way to especially on the OTT side, to fill some programming needs?
Well, now that you say that, we're in our third year of podcast programming. And I'll tell you that the team came to Frank Jones, the news director, and to me, and they said they wanted to do a podcast. And I said, I just didn't necessarily see that we had the time or necessarily see that there was revenue in the podcast. But I said, hey, if you guys want to do it and you can do it and it doesn't take away from your regular day of programming, go ahead and do it. Now we're in our third year of doing the podcast, and we're having moderate sales with it. It hasn't been a big focus for us, but we have sponsors, not big dollars that are going to make the budget, but there is an interest. Probably like you, if I go to your podcast list on your phone, you probably have about 10 different podcasts that you follow. And we're finding that if you make it relevant, there is enough audience out there so that you actually have people who are actually following it. And it was really, interestingly, a morale booster for the people inside who wanted to put it together. So I think that sometimes you have to ask your staff and your team, what do you want to do? Because this business can't just be about us directing our team on what to do every day. And we got about 3 or 4 members that participate in it. And it's something that really they love doing. And I think eventually it will expand.
That's interesting. Let me ask you about OTT sales. The platform's going to need to make some money. So are your sellers comfortable and successful moving local advertisers into streaming at this point?
So it's twofold for us. So we'll be selling OTT on our local platform, but right now we work with a service called Premium, which you may have heard of. And what Premium does is they help us to sell spots with our advertisers on OTT platforms across the board. And we're finding that each year we're growing more and more. Not to talk specific numbers, but we're in the 6 figures this year, and that's where we are year to date. We'll have big numbers by the end of the year. So the account executives are getting more and more comfortable knowing that they have to continue to sell digital. They got to understand OTT. They have to make it very comfortable. And as we begin to do more local programming, I think the way to do those sales is to start with sponsorships. Sponsorships are good long-term ways to say to someone, be part of the ground level, grow with us, make your commitment, and then let's see how business is working. Are your products and services moving? Are people talking about it? As opposed to just concentrating on the spot market. And then as we do that, then we'll bring more spot advertisers in. And I think that once again, it's going to be mostly your local advertisers, not necessarily your national advertisers that are going to make that work. So far, Premium, it's a success, and I think it'll be a success locally as well.
I had one of Gray's programming SVPs, Matt Jacquint, on a panel recently. We were talking about programming.
He's my direct report, by the way.
So there's a lot of hours to fill, and OTT is just increasing to that load. So where are you reassessing your own local programming, news hours that you might add, or other kinds of local programming that might be in the pipeline, especially as syndication continues to constrict?
Yeah, we're trying to be proactive with it. Just in looking at the marketplace going forward. So our first experiment was we decided that we were not going to renew Kelly and Ryan. And that was a big deal. People said, wow.
Choice.
They said, that's been on the air for before you got here, Kym. And so we're talking about 30 plus years. And I said, yep, I get it. I said, but let's do the math. Are we making the profit that we should be making on it? And if we're not, that's one decision. And then also, can we replace it with a combination of programming that makes sense? So what we decided to do in September, we decided to take the Today Show and pattern. So we have, the 4 hours of the Today Show. And then we decided to go with a local show at 11, which was actually going to be a straight news show. And then we changed our show at noon, which was a combination of local news and also doing a lifestyle show. We made it a 100% lifestyle show at 12 and local news at 11. Now, Did I think it was a risk? I honestly did not. I think that people who are watching television, because we have a lot of people who are searching for different content, there's no other local news on at 11 a.m. As I said, the one woman who called me and said, "How dare you take this show off? I've been watching this show for years." I said, "Well, watch the Today Show at 10 o'clock and let me know, call me back and let me know how you like it." And I said, and I mean that. I said, call me back after you've watched it for a couple of weeks and tell me how you like it. And then also let me know if you watch the 11 o'clock news. Well, as it turns out, this young lady did call me back and she said, "Well, I miss Kelly, but I do like Hoda and, whoever else was on at the time with Hoda." And she said, "And I watch your 11 o'clock news a couple of times a week. That's all I'm looking for. That's all I'm looking for." And the big bonus is, and we're a ComScore station, the numbers went up at 10 and 11. So it was a win for us. And the local news allows us to pivot, cover what we need to cover. And then the magic thing, Michael, is I have more inventory available to give to my account executives so they can go out and be able to bring more clients and partnerships to the station. So they're calculated risks, but I think it's the way that we have to go. And we'll probably be doing more of that in the future.
Well, as you add on more local programming, it puts a strain on your newsroom. So how are you dealing with that?
Well, so hope Michael J. Quinn's not listening. But of course, if we're going to be asked to do more, or we choose to do more local programming, we have to put together a business plan. So that means that there has to be some expansion. And of course, you know that sometimes some companies say, "Well, no, sorry, you got to get it done with the team you have." Gray is not exactly like that. I have to be a good business person. As I tell my team, I said, if we're going to say we want to expand to doing more local, which is advantageous, how are we paying for it? And so that means adding staff, adding producers, news people, and you got to have a showrunner if you go with a local show, and then show me how much inventory we're gaining. And then I say to the sales department, so let's look at what we make now and what we will make if we make the change. And one of the big things is when I drop those big weekly syndication dollars that I'm spending every week for programming, that drops to the bottom line. So I'm able to show how I can make this profitable. And I promise you, with some things that we're going to do going forward, we're going to be able to make it work. But at the same time, I don't believe in telling the staff that you have to now do 20% more work with the same people. That's not realistic. So we're going to bring some more people in. And we want to do it where people want to enjoy doing it and not say, "Boy, I really don't like being in local news." And I consider this to be a plan that technology's got to be involved in, marketing department's got to be involved in it, sales has got to be involved in it, news, of course. Everyone has to take some involvement in the commitment so that it really is a team effort.
Well, because everybody is dealing with employee burnout, or at least fatigue. And then you have the challenge of recruiting younger employees who have very different ideas about what their work lives should look like right now. So how are you dealing with and reconciling those labor issues?
Yeah, it's tough. COVID didn't help. I would tell you, when, anyone who's had the opportunity to work from home, if that worked for their home life balance, me, I'm kind of a station rat. So I never went home. And, as the leader of the station, I still had a lot of people coming in. So I didn't want to be home, but I did get, for those people that found a way to be able to work from home, they had a work-life balance. Believe me, I've sat down and talked to a lot of people, but Gray does not really have a work from home philosophy. But we do have a philosophy of let's make sure that we're working with employees as best we can to make sure that what we do fits into their lifestyle. So take, for instance, an account executive. I'm not expecting an account executive to be sitting at their desk anyway. So they should be in and out. But my philosophy is we don't sell widgets. We're in the news business. So I want my account executives coming in. I want you to go through the newsroom. I want you to get tight with the people in marketing. If you're someone who wants to be in this business, you need to know our business. I'm old-fashioned about that. My managers, they're in. Am I flexible when you have to say that you got to leave at 3 o'clock because you got to go to a soccer game? Of course, because I know that tomorrow you're going to be here, whatever time you need to do to get it in. You're going to be in and out of the building. A little different, obviously, in other departments like news, that are on deadline, they got to be here. But we try to have a culture that makes it comfortable for people. Now, having said that, it is harder to recruit younger people into our business and to keep them long-term, because many of them are very, very ambitious. And where we'd have people stay a 2-year term and then another 2-year term. Now what happens, unless they fall in love with Richmond or whatever local market they're in, we find that now they might want to leave after the first term. So the good thing that we started doing, because Gray has scale now, we're in 113 markets, is that we have a recruiting department, and 6 months before their contract is over, if they don't want to sign with us, we say, well, why don't you talk to the recruiter? Because now we have many markets that you might want to grow to. And Gray is, I mean, Richmond's not a small market. We're a mid-sized market with a lot to offer for young people here, but it is changing. And you have to be recruiting and looking all the time. And everyone has to be a recruiter. Like my news director and his assistant news director, they're always looking at YouTube and looking at tape, because you have to constantly be looking. And fortunately, I have Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, Roanoke, other stations that are not that far from here. So we do recruit from them, but don't tell them I said that. But we have a happy recruiting situation. But it hasn't been anywhere near disastrous here. But we have to respect that when people say they want to move on, my philosophy is come here, get really good, but stay enough time where you're really good and you've learned a lot. But if you want to go somewhere else, I say this in our group meetings, and I say it in the orientation when I'm talking to people. You can go where you need to go, learn our craft, and when you're ready, we'll help you to get to where you want to go. I think that's the only way you can continue to keep people in the business. But it is challenging. But I'm glad that Gray expanded their recruitment department. Another thing that at our Jackson, Mississippi station at WLBT, we actually are developing a center there for training, because we offer a lot of training, and that's going to try to recruit people not only in the state of Mississippi from HBCUs, but we're trying to use that as a place to bring in people from diverse communities. And then we offer through Gray a lot of training, and that is what we have to do, is to say to people when we bring them on board, not only will we bring you into the business, but we will give you professional training. And honestly, that gets them set up for the future. And I think that Gray probably has some of the best training in the business.
You're talking about news training there, like MMJ training or
yeah, producer training, producer training. We have a producer training school. If you bring in a new account executive, we can send them there for training in sales and digital. And then they also have training for, basically for leaders to do leadership training as well. And then Gray is one of those companies that a lot of people said, yeah, no more conferences. We're not doing that anymore. We have conferences for the GMs. We have conferences for the GSMs. The marketing people go to conferences. Our technology guys go to conferences. Our news guys go to conferences. So we're trying to make Gray a place that if you land here, you should want to stay. And that's our job to make that happen.
So just lastly, what else is on your mind these days? Next gen figuring in there a good bit?
Well, we were the lighthouse we were the lighthouse station in Richmond for Next Gen, and we just crossed over a couple of weeks ago. I think my director of technology, Ben, and I were probably the only ones that were really uncorking champagne bottles and thinking it was a great day, because it's a technology move, but you really won't see the real move until we have more people begin to buy the sets. But it was really historic, and it was a very smoothly done, very cooperative between the stations. I was really proud of the moment, because it does now take us to that next generation, just like when we went to color TV and then we went to digital, and now we're going to where the laptop that you and I are using right now, your TV will work the same way, but even better. So I think that Next Gen is the next thing for us to really begin to break out and communicate with people in the way that they want to receive our media and data. So I'm very excited about it, and I think we'll see more of it. And we have some other announcements that are coming. I can't tell you right now, but something soon is coming in the Richmond market that will be very exciting for some of our viewers.
All right, well, let us know before everybody else.
Okay.
Kym Grinnage, it's been good to get your thoughts and a GM's perspective. Thanks so much for being here today.
And thank you, Michael, for doing this. You play an important role in making sure people know about what we're doing.
Thanks very much. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. See you next time. A new episode of Talking TV is available most Fridays on TVNewsCheck.com. You can also listen and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify.